Thank you for joining us today. We're just going to give everyone a few minutes to join the session, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I have just a few logistics for you all today. Thank you for joining us for the Public Lands Transportation Fellows Program informational session for our 2023 cohort or class. My name is Jamie Sullivan and I am the manager for the program. I'm excited to be able to give you some more information today about it. Our webinar today will be 1 hour and we are recording this so that we can archive it on the website in case you'd like to view it again later or send it out to anyone else who may be interested in it. You can see right there the link on the slide for where it will be held afterwards. And I do have a QR code at the end of the presentation as well that you can look at. We will be doing questions at the end. I'm going to bring on a couple of our current fellows to answer all your questions. And so you can feel free to use that question pod over on the right-hand side. Please put those questions in at any time, and we'll address those when we get to the question and answer period at the end. So I'm hoping that you joined us today because either you're planning to apply to the program or you're looking for more information so that you can provide this information out to potential applicants. And perhaps you're looking to obtain a unique paid opportunity for career development. This is a great program for that, and we'll talk a little bit about how. Perhaps you're looking to learn more about working for the federal government. And again, this program is a great way to do that and provide some benefits for getting a job in the federal government after it is over. Perhaps you're also looking to become one of the next generation of public stewards for the field of transportation and to work in some of these great valuable resources we have across the country. And hopefully you're looking to make an impact on transportation and environmental conservation. And we'll get to talk to our fellows a little bit about at the end about what they've been able to do over the last couple of years to make that kind of impact. And also incite innovative change in our transportation systems and the environmental lands. And I did see some questions come in as you all were registering about the scopes of work and the types of projects and how much you might be able to have input into what those are, and you being able to discover some of that and insight some of that innovative change. And we'll talk about a couple of those answers as well as we get going today. So again, I'm very excited that you're all here. I hope that we'll see all of you apply to our program. So our Public Lands Transportation Program began in 2012. It was modeled after the very successful program by the National Park Service called the Transportation Scholars Program that has been around for a very long time before we began this program. This particular program came about with a funding source called the Paul S. Sarbanes Transit in the Parks funding, and there was a technical assistance center that was helping all of the public land management agencies with their transportation. And at the time we said we love the National Park Service Scholars Program. It's done some really great things across the country, but wouldn't it be really great if the other public lands also had the opportunity to have these types of scholars? And so with that funding, we were able to put scholars in lands at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, at the U.S. Forest Service, and also at the Bureau of Land Management. And those fellows worked alongside the National Park Service Scholars program that was going on. We did joint orientations. They all got to get together at conferences, and we were able to work all as one big group. Shortly after that, when the funding ran out for the Transit and Parks program, the National Park Service program also stopped having scholars too. And we were lucky that the Fish and Wildlife Service wanted to continue this program. They felt that it made a great impact to their refuges, and they decided to fund to continue having fellows for themselves. And so we continued that program for a few years with just Fish Wildlife Fellows. And we're lucky to say that 2 years ago, National Park Service decided to join the program again as well. And so we have a few of the National Park Service fellows on board here now too. And I'm very excited to talk more about that and have you ask them some questions about the differences between working in Fish and National Park Service. Our program has 4 distinct goals, and I'll pause just for a second to give you a chance to read these so that I don't have to read them to you. But mainly you'll see that this is meant to be a mutually beneficial program. We really want to make sure that the federal land management agencies, so the ones that we're serving here, Fish and Wildlife Service and National Park Service, are able to have some additional employees to help them with transportation issues that they're having and be able to come up with some really great solutions for those transportation issues. But at the same time, we're also trying to help newly graduated applicants go ahead and learn more about working with the federal government, give you some opportunities to work in these beautiful lands at National Park Service and Fish and Wildlife, and also be able to incite that change that we talked about a little bit ago. And so we've put the program together to be, as I mentioned, mutually beneficial for both groups. And we'll go through some of those ways. Right now, I want to talk to you a little bit about our program by the numbers, just so you can see how it's impacted these federal land management agencies since 2012. So since 2012, we've had 23 fellows in our program. 12 of those fellows were extended beyond their original time of service, and 10 of them have been promoted to be advanced fellows, and they've been able to stay on with us to do additional things outside of their original scope of work. So 2 of the fellows that we're going to talk to a little bit later are part of those who were promoted to advanced fellows. So you'll see at the very beginning they worked at a unit, and when they were promoted to advanced fellow, they started working at a regional office as well to be able to do some additional responsibilities beyond what they had the first time. We've also had fellows come from a variety of backgrounds and majors and colleges. And so I want to make sure that you know that we're open to taking and looking at all different applicants. We've had some with history backgrounds, some with environmental science backgrounds, some with urban planning backgrounds, some with civil engineering backgrounds. So a whole bunch across the spectrum of different majors. What we're really looking for is people who are able to work not only individually, but also as a team, people who are able to do some of that research and really put it into practice, and people who are really interested in working in this natural environment and doing some transportation type of work. We've seen people come from all different colleges, from universities across the country, ranging from California to New Mexico to Illinois to Utah, some of the private colleges as well, Clark University, Oberlin, we've seen Portland State and Rutgers. So just, you know, colleges from all across the country is where we're really pulling applicants from. And then as far as where they've served, we've served, as I mentioned earlier, all 4 of those federal land management agencies at the beginning of this program. So the U.S. Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and National Park Service. They've been at 15 separate units across the country and 6 separate complexes. We've also had 6 people who have deployed at headquarters for one of those agencies to be able to see what happens there, and then 3 regional office deployments. And as I mentioned, 2 of the fellows on the call today are part of those regional office deployments, and our other 2 are part of headquarters deployments. So we'll get to hear a little bit about what they've done too. For the program details, if you are selected to become a fellow, you will be an employee of the Western Transportation Institute at Montana State University. That's where your paycheck will come from. That's where your supervisor will be. But you will serve as a contractor for either the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or the National Park Service. And then depending on which service that you're working for, it will be either an 18-month duration if it is Fish and Wildlife, or a 24-month duration if it is National Park Service. It is a full-time paid fellowship, so you make about a little over $50,000 per year, or $24.23 per hour if you'd like to break it down that way as well. You do also receive benefits, so you'll get the full suite of benefits that Montana State provides, which include medical, dental, vision, life insurance, and a retirement account as well. And then you'll also be able to start accruing hours for vacation and sick time. So we accrue 10 hours per month for vacation, which you can use after you've been employed by Montana State for 6 months. And you start accruing right away the 8 hours of sick time per month, which you can start using after you have worked for us for 3 months. We also provide travel reimbursements if we ask you to travel to conferences or to some of the other units in your area. And we also provide a relocation reimbursement for you to move to and from the location that you're going to be serving. So additional opportunities for fellows. Once you complete this fellowship, it does unlock a preferred hiring status for the federal government, as I mentioned. So that is a non-compete eligibility, which will help you obtain a job in the federal government a little bit easier. It is useful for 2 years after you receive that non-competitive eligibility. So it will allow you to apply for those federal jobs that you may want to within those 2 years. It also helps you experience work at multiple levels within the agency. So as I mentioned, our fellows on board have worked within units, within regions, and within headquarters. If you are working with the Fish and Wildlife Service, you will be stationed at a unit, but you will get a detail to both the region office and the headquarters office so that you can see what the work looks like at both of those levels. And for our upcoming National Park Service fellows, you will either be stationed at a region or headquarters, and then we'll have the opportunity to work at some of the unit level parks as well. You get to work closely under the coaching and mentoring of staff at whichever agency you're at. So you will have a supervisor or mentor at your unit, region, or headquarters where you're stationed full-time. And then additionally, you are provided an opportunity to go through an orientation with all of the fellows and with the mentors through the Western Transportation Institute, and also some of those supervisors from Fish and National Park Service. There are professional development funds that are provided so that you can either take trainings or purchase books to learn more, or perhaps attend a conference that will best fit the scope of work that you're doing. We have guest lectures once a month where we have people come in and talk to us either about potential jobs within the federal service or how to build a resume, or we have people come in and talk about project management skills and how you can do those. Or different topics within the federal government that you may be interested in, or within planning and transportation in general. And so we do solicit feedback from our fellows to pull those guest lectures. So if there's something you're really interested in, and it's not something that you're going to be doing per se within your fellowship, but are really interested in learning more about it, then we will go out and seek a guest to come in and speak about that to you so that you can ask questions and learn more about those particular things. We also do conference attendance. We have at least once during our fellowship, the fellows attend what's called the Transportation Research Board in Washington, D.C., which happens every January, and we're getting ready to go do that here in a couple weeks. Our fellows tend to present a poster and sometimes also do a live presentation at this conference. And then we have the opportunity to go to additional conferences as well that relate to your topic. So our fellows have gone to safety conferences, they've gone to equity conferences, they've gone to some non-motorized or alternative transportation conferences. So anything that could relate to what it is that you're working on and doing, and that could help you both professionally, but also within this fellowship. And it really helps you build that professional network that you're going to want for the rest of your career, being able to learn and meet new people, join them on LinkedIn, give out your resume for potential jobs at the end of this fellowship. And then, as I mentioned, you'll also have a mentor that you're assigned from the Western Transportation Institute or one of our subcontractors. And that person's going to meet with you on a every other week basis so that you can go through your scope of work. And if you have questions about how to carry out some of the work or need resources for doing so, that's where this mentor really comes in. They're also going to be the one checking in with you to make sure that you're working on some of the requirements of the fellowship, such as our poster and our final report, our final webinar. If you were able to join us yesterday, Charlie, who we're going to talk to a little bit later, did his final webinar yesterday, and that will be posted on our website here soon if you'd like to learn more about what he did. But so that's where your mentors really come in, is guiding you throughout this process and the scope of work when you have questions. So a couple of requirements that we do have. The first two requirements are based on that non-competitive eligibility that I mentioned that you get at the end of the term. So to be eligible for that non-compete for federal government, you must be a U.S. citizen, national, or lawful permanent resident alien of the U.S., and you must be 30 years of age or under by the start date of the program. So not the application date, but the start date. And then we also would like you to have a bachelor's degree at least to apply for the fellowship. Now, if you do not meet the qualifications of those top two bullets, we would still be happy to take a look at your application and talk to you about this and see whether or not you fit the rest of the needs for the positions. It's just that you would not be eligible for that federal non-compete upon the completion of your fellowship. So to get into what we have for this year's, upcoming year's cohort or fellows, we have 3 positions with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which we're very excited about. The first is with the Ridgefield National Wildlife Refuge Complex. It is stationed in Ridgefield, Washington, which is just north of Vancouver, Washington, and about 45 minutes from Portland, Oregon. We also will have an opportunity for a fellow at Desert National Wildlife Refuge Complex, which that person will be stationed in Las Vegas, Nevada. And the last location is the Crab Orchard National Wildlife Refuge. And that person will be stationed in Marion, Illinois, which is about 5 hours from Chicago, 3 hours from Nashville, and 2 hours from St. Louis. Now, the difference between the complex and the refuge is that a complex has several refuges within it. So the person will be stationed at the headquarters for that complex, as I mentioned here, but you may have the opportunity to work on projects at some of those other refuges that are nearby, typically within about a 45-minute drive. Crab Orchard is one refuge all by itself. So the projects that the Fish and Wildlife Service fellows will be working on this year, when you do go to apply and the applications open up, we'll have much more detailed position descriptions that you can take a look at. But some of the things will be trail work and planning, working with partners and doing stakeholder communications. We have some safety projects going on amongst these 3 refuges, definitely doing some working group information. So working with stakeholders that have already set up things such as a trail working group or a infrastructure type working group. And then also looking at improving the wayfinding at some of these complexes. So that could be helping them work on their maps using GIS. It could be helping them figure out where new signs need to go for people to be able to get here. There also is one of these complexes is hoping to work a little bit more on their accessibility as well. So not just the typical accessibility that we consider where we talk about ADA and disabilities, but also some other types of accessibility for people with sensory overload as well. And so just really looking at each of these complexes, and when you take a look at the position descriptions, you'll be able to see a little bit more detail again about what they're looking for. And then as you get started as a fellow, we will provide you with a scope of work that is more detailed on each of these projects about what the refuge is really looking to prioritize and get started working on. I did have some questions come in from you guys about whether those potential projects are generated by the agencies or the fellows and what kind of flexibility or influence you can have on those. So to get started, we do talk to the refuges, the complexes, and then in National Park Service, the regions and the headquarters to generate those projects. And they really tell us what their priorities are and why they would like to have a fellow working there with them, and what would be most useful to them. Now you'll notice that we've been working on those throughout this fall. So by the time we get to having a fellow on board the end of next spring, a lot of things could change. So we do have the opportunity for you as a fellow to go through and take a look at those scope of works over the first couple weeks that you're there. You're going to be doing a lot of research and reviewing and tours of the area and looking at planning documents that already exist and talking with your mentors and your supervisors. And there's the opportunity for you to take a look at that scope of work and provide additional input into it and be able to say, you know, I think that this would be a really great project to solve this particular issue that you're having, or be able to talk through whether or not some of those priorities may have changed over the 6 months since we created them, or perhaps you have an expertise in something that they didn't even consider as a project in the first place, and are going to be able to provide some of that input. So we do want to give you input as well into the scope of work and what you're going to be able to work on, but the majority of the projects have been outlined by what is important and prioritized for the complex. So we'll be working with you to provide a little bit of your input into those, as well as trying to make sure that we get accomplished what it is that they are looking to do. So for the National Park Service, we are also hiring 3 fellows for the 2023 cohort. The first is a transportation safety fellow who will be working nationwide. They will be stationed in either Denver, Colorado or Bozeman, Montana at the WTI headquarters. And they're going to be focused on that transportation safety side of work. Then we will have a fellow at the Intermountain region who will be a planning and visitor use fellow. They'll be stationed in Denver, Colorado, working for the regional office, and they'll be focused on projects on emerging mobility and equity impacts in that region, so in the Intermountain region. And our third and final fellow for NPS will be a Midwest region climate fellow. They'll be stationed in Omaha, Nebraska, and they'll be focusing on climate impacts in the Midwest region. And so again, additional information on the types of work that could be done by each of these fellows will be provided in the position description when we get that uploaded to our website and open applications. So now if you are still interested, and we hope that you are, here's the timeline that we anticipate for 2023. So we anticipate opening the applications at the beginning of January. If we're able to get those out sooner, then we will be sending all of that information to our listservs. I'll provide you with the link at the very end of today where you can sign up for that if you're not already signed up for our listserv. You'll also hopefully see these applications be posted. We have a LinkedIn page, they'll be posted there, and we will be doing some paid advertisements as well on some of the job hiring boards for people to apply to this. We will be reviewing applications that come in February. And then we will be doing interviews and reference checks in March. In April, once we have let our top interviewees know that they are, that hopefully they will accept those positions. And once the position has been accepted by a fellow, we will do background checks and the hiring paperwork in April. It takes a couple weeks to get all of the paperwork done. And then our start dates are intended to be between May and June of 2023. And there's a big gap in that, or a big range, I guess, in May to June. And that is mostly for you all. We'd like to make sure that depending on when you're going to be graduating, if you graduated already, or if you do have a graduation, that we can accommodate that for you in the applications. And so we'll really work with you as to when your start date will be, what will work for you and what will work for the location that you're going to within May to June timeframe. So what do you have to do to be able to apply and show us your skills and talents and really let us know how you could become a fellow is to fill out an application, provide us with a cover letter and a resume. We also ask for a writing sample or a graphic sample. So if there's some really cool infographic or map that you've created, that would be great to display as well. And then a letter of recommendation. The QR code that you're seeing right now takes you directly to our webpage for applying. Again, none of this is up on the page yet, but will be there by the beginning of January, along with those position descriptions. So the applications, just so you all are aware, there will be 2 separate applications, one for the National Park Service Fellows and one for the Fish and Wildlife Fellows. However, the other 4 things you can submit just once, and I will make sure to copy them over for both programs if you're interested in applying to both programs. This is because we'll have separate committees looking at fellows for fish as opposed to fellows for National Park Service. And that will also allow you to let us know which of the locations that you're interested in going to or not interested in going to. For instance, if for some reason you are not interested in living in Las Vegas and only the other 2 appeal to you, then you'll be able to describe that in the application and check those boxes. And so again, 1 application for fish, 1 application for national park, and then the other 4 pieces you can provide once, and that will be sufficient. We will copy them for both committees that will be looking at these. So at this point in time, I'm excited to ask our fellows to come on camera, and they are going to give you a little bit of information about who they are, what they've done, and how they've worked for us over the last 2 years. And then we'll take some questions from the audience for the fellows and also answer a few of the questions that came in from you all as you were registering for this. So I'm going to start first with Tommy, please.
Yeah, everyone, my name is Tommy Egeland. I am now an advanced public lands transportation fellow. I went to grad school at Colorado State University and studied conservation leadership. Before that, kind of moseyed around the Rockies for quite a while. And yeah, I spent my public lands, the initial fellowship, working with the Savannah Coastal Refuge Complex station, or in Savannah, Georgia, or near Savannah, Georgia. And while with the complex, I worked on primarily infrastructure related projects. So making sure that people can physically access refuges for a long time. And then as an advanced transportation fellow, I moved into a position with the regional office down in the Southeast and have been acting as or filling in for the regional transportation coordinator position, which is in construction terms, I guess, project administration and like budget management position, where I've been lucky to coordinate with refuges throughout the Southeast and with the Federal Highway Administration and a lot of other agencies and organizations along the way.
And Taylor?
Hey everyone, yeah, I'm Taylor Long. I am an advanced public lands transportation fellow. I'm based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, at John Hines National Wildlife Refuge. I started the fellowship back in August of 2020, and the first kind of term of my fellowship for the first year and a half, I was splitting my time between this refuge in Philadelphia, doing a lot of alternative transportation work and a lot of community engagement for trails projects. And I also worked with 2 other refuges along the Jersey Shore, Cape May Wildlife Refuge and E.B. Forsyth National Wildlife Refuge. Again, working on a lot of kind of connectivity projects for different trails and a lot of equity work. For this advanced fellowship, I've instead been kind of splitting my time between the projects I've been working on at Hines and then also working with the regional offices, regional transportation coordinator. And for that work, I've been doing a lot of funding grant applications for different projects across the region, as well as exploring some kind of new emerging mobility things for the service, including coordinating with rideshare agencies and working on electric vehicle charging stations and kind of working with another fellow to develop a toolkit for the region. In terms of my background, I actually got my bachelor's degree in journalism and was working as a journalist for a while. I worked at a market research firm for a little while before going back to grad school to get my master's in urban planning at University of Illinois at Chicago, and kind of came to the fellowship out of that because I was doing a lot of work on, I actually wasn't focusing in on transportation so much as I was economic development and sustainable tourism. And so that's kind of how I came into this role.
Thanks, Taylor. And how about Pat?
All right, hello everybody. I'm Pat McMahon. I'm the Climate Change Adaptation and Active Transportation Fellow with the National Park Service. I graduated from Ohio State University in 2019 with a degree in geography and minors in urban planning and environmental science. And I see there's a couple Buckeyes on the line here, so I'm happy to see that and encourage you to apply. And I'm currently enrolled at Montana State University in a Master's in Land Resources and Environmental Science program, which I'm very excited to start in the spring semester here. So as the Climate Change Adaptation and Active Transportation Fellow, my fellowship has kind of been split into two major focuses. The climate change piece has been working with the National Park Service's national office that we call WASO, their transportation planning branch, focused in the Pacific Northwest at Mount Rainier, North Cascades, and Olympic National Parks, working to develop strategies for them to overcome some of the challenges they're facing that stem from climate change, and namely glacial recession and changing precipitation patterns that lead to flooding and damage to infrastructure. And that was my focus for the first year of my fellowship, which was last year. And then the second piece of my fellowship, which is the active transportation piece, is working with WASO's alternative transportation program. And that is based here in DC, where I now live. And the primary focus of that piece of my fellowship has been working with transportation trails, which is a subset of trails in the National Park Service that provide access to national parks without having to use a car to get there, essentially. So prioritizing active transportation and alternative transportation access to parks. And I've had the opportunity to lead a research project that we've called the Trailblazer Research Project, where we've used electric bikes outfitted with cameras and sensor systems to assess the conditions of trails and map data on how rough the trails are and photographs of the trails, all on GIS for trail managers to make decisions on priorities to keep those trails in good condition. And that's been the focus of the fellowship so far. I've also recently been extended for 2 more years, so I'll be around for any of you that end up joining the program. So that's that for me, I think. I'll turn it over to Charlie then.
Thanks, Pat. So I'm Charlie Gould. That's my picture over on the right. And I am the Transportation Fellow for the NPS, working on the Emerging Mobility Initiative at the WASO level. Emerging mobility, that is sort of like future of transportation technology, all shared use. We look at automated vehicles, micromobility devices, ride hailing, and vehicle electrification. It's kind of an odd fit because originally I'm a history major. I graduated from the University of Rochester in 2020 with a degree in history, but managed to make that make sense. It's history of trade and transportation. No, this fellowship is fantastic. I mean, fellow's fantastic too, all 4 of them. Yeah, it's taken me across the country. I was in Yellowstone National Park in 2021, as well as Wright Brothers National Memorial. I got to live in DC through most of 2022. For me, at least, it had a remote dimension as well. So I'm in Massachusetts now. Highly recommend it. It is the best start you can get. And I have also been extended for 2 years. So I hope to meet some of you very soon as fellow fellows. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you all for doing the introductions. So while we're waiting to see if anyone in the audience has questions, please go ahead and put those into the question pod over on the right-hand side now. But we're going to get started with answering some of the ones that came in as people were registering. So our first one for you guys is, how is this program helping advance sustainability and or renewable fuel options? So a lot of you just talked about some of those different projects that you worked on that could fit into those different categories. So let's go around again, and if you wouldn't mind just talking a little bit about what you did that may have helped advance sustainability or renewable fuel. Pat, let's start with you.
All right. So as far as advancing sustainability goals, the transportation trails aspect of my fellowship is definitely where I kind of overlap with that goal. As I mentioned, transportation trails are a small subset of trails in the NPS that provide access to parks without needing to use cars, and encouraging active transportation for visitors of parks, which, you know, is just keeping cars off the roads, encouraging people to use trails and to ride bikes or walk to and from national parks, and working on the Trailblazer project, which is assessing the condition of that network, that smaller network of trails, is helping to prioritize areas that might need more attention, that trail managers and park staff could prioritize to either get those trails in better condition, and just to see the condition of the network overall, so that we make sure we're able to provide access and sustain access to the parks via trails and not via cars. So that's the gist of it for me, I think.
Perfect. And Charlie, how about you from the emerging mobility side?
Yeah, certainly. So, you know, there's a lot of what Pat said there in emerging mobility as well. Alternatives to cars are going to be better than single occupant, single use vehicles. So, you know, even if you've got a zero fuel source electric vehicle, or, you know, zero emission electric vehicle, so the battery's still got to go somewhere. So if you can get as many of those people on at once, that's a real high goal to shoot for. You know, I think an interesting way to offset emissions and to provide an alternative is to make transportation interesting, fun, and desirable. I mean, I think a place that, you know, we're seeing this in cities a lot with, you know, people choosing to bike, not simply because it's greener, but because they arrive to work better prepared for the day, in a better mood. It's a healthier option. And, you know, what's better than biking to work in a city? Well, it's biking to, you know, go see the Grand Canyon. So I think presenting good alternatives that are more enjoyable than cars is really kind of part of that emerging mobility vision.
Thank you. And Taylor, you worked on some projects that were relevant to cars themselves, and doing some sustainability pieces. Can you talk a little bit about the project you just finished up for the regional office?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the projects that I was working on was to provide a toolkit for how to successfully implement electric vehicle charging stations at refuges across the region. So providing different information about incentives that are available across the states in the region to kind of make it easier for refuges to implement and provide public charging. Working on some guidelines in terms of how to move our existing vehicle fleet. So in other words, vehicles owned by Fish and Wildlife Service, to transition those over the next few years to electric vehicles, and what sort of that will look like and what those considerations will be. So that was a big piece. And I'll also just add too, in terms of a lot of the project work that I've been doing at Hines, it's been really providing alternative transportation options. So working with public transit as well as different trail partners in the city to create trails where folks can access the refuge and bike within their communities, or have more reliable public transit options in terms of getting to green spaces.
And so for our next question, I'm going to start with you, Tommy. So what kind of flexibility or influence did you as a fellow have in determining what the work that you were going to be taking on, and being able to adjust your scope of work a little bit and provide some of your own input into what you could do and how your expertise would lend well to the priorities of the unit?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. A lot of my background, I managed and led trail crews. So that infrastructure piece was something that really kind of brought me in. And while I was in my initial fellowship, I was able to, or the initial year and a half fellowship, I was able to kind of form my scope of work after it came. I was able to add a project that was helping to maintain or improve upon a structure that out of one of our islands to help people be able to keep visiting the island. It's a pretty highly used place, considering it you can only get there via boat. And then I was able to kind of, with a lot of help from the former RTC, get involved in a lot of other projects and groups, mostly surrounding like visitor estimation. And then I have been able to work as, in my current position, with the Human Dimensions branch, which is just the social science arm of the Fish and Wildlife Service, to kind of continue that visitor estimation work. And it's led to a lot of really great connections, but also in the position that I'm going to be moving into with the Fish and Wildlife Service, I get to help them and do a detail or kind of like a fill-in role with them, working directly with the Human Dimensions branch. So yeah, it's the scope of work is rigid, but rigidly flexible, I would say.
And I think that's a good way to put it. And it sounds like it allowed you to not only use some of the qualifications and expertise you came in with to make an impact using those, but also allowed you to take some of what you're hoping to get or do for a job after the fellowship and be able to learn more about that and be able to get some opportunities and experiences with that. So that's fantastic. How about Pat or Charlie? Could one of you guys talk about the scopes of work from the National Park Service side? Pat, go ahead.
Yeah, I can lead off. I think my scope of work had an unusual amount of flexibility compared to maybe some other fellows. So when I came in, I think my description was trails and sustainability, and my scope of work was broader, with some like broader goals, but acknowledging like the groups I'd be working with, and sort of generally what I'd be kind of involved with, and that gave me space to kind of express what I was interested in and what I kind of wanted to learn about and get involved in. For example, when I first joined, I expressed that I was interested in climate change and how the parks are managing climate change. And the people at the transportation planning program listened to me there and allowed me to sort of develop a project out in the Northwest that was dealing with climate change impacts on transportation infrastructure out there. So that was some serious flexibility that I'm very appreciative of them for listening to my interests and then allowing me to kind of develop my scope like that.
So we did have another question come in for you guys, and we'll start with Charlie for this one. So the question is, what skills do you think are most important for being a successful fellow?
In my opinion, it all boils down to communication. I think a lot of the other fellows would agree with that. The ability to communicate, one-on-one with your supervisor and your mentor, communicate within a team and coordinate that level of communication necessary to follow through on a project, even to be able to communicate in front of a room. They're all like sort of give and take. You can have a couple and not one of them, or be more or less comfortable in different scenarios, but at the end of the day, being able to communicate well is really important to the planning process. I think it's the difference between this fellowship and a lot of coursework that you may have done, or playing a city planning video game. We have a lot of SimCity kids in the fellowship for some reason, but I think it's everything in planning is a conversation, and in the fellowship, it's just proved to be the most important thing.
How about Taylor?
Yeah, I have to probably second what Charlie said. I think communication has definitely been the skill that's come in most handy. I'm trying to think of another one so that I can give some additional. Yeah, in terms of like the technical skills, I feel like I'll just take this opportunity to say that you're given the opportunity to learn a lot of those things on the job. So for example, I did some mapping and some site planning and stuff, but those weren't, I came in with very a teeny amount of experience in some of those things from my planning program, and definitely had the chance to beef those up quite a deal. So if some of those technical skills are something you're, worried about, or maybe you don't have as much experience with, I would say that, yeah, really, a lot of it does come down to communication and having a good attitude and willingness to learn.
How about Tommy? You got any others?
Yeah, I kind of just want to echo what Taylor said to end that. Just, having a good attitude and willing to learn goes a long way. And then for anyone that wants project management or administration experience, it's I think at least the Fish Fellows for the most part got at least a bit of project management opportunities, which is pretty big when you're coming into a fellowship type program. I guess everyone did, actually. And yeah, it can be a hard skill to come by, especially again in a position like a fellowship, like a postgraduate experience.
And how about Pat? You got any others?
Communication is key. That's all I gotta say.
I guess I would also say something that we're looking for is someone who's very flexible, because you've heard all of the fellows talk about the fact that things change, and we need someone who's able to go along with some of those changes. Supervisors sometimes change, mentors sometimes change. You have the opportunity to travel quite a bit, and so your location may change. You're going to be working with different levels of federal government. There could be some delays if you're waiting on funding, so your scope of work may change based on these delays. So someone who's open to having those changes occur and is flexible to kind of roll with them is really important. I guess that would be one of mine too. Anyone think of any others while I was just talking? No, okay. So another question, I've got 2 more questions for you. And again, if we have anyone in the audience who has questions they'd like to see answered, please go ahead and put those in while we're getting wrapped up here. But after the fellowship, what happens? So we have had, of those 23 fellows that we mentioned to you about, we've had them go and do all kinds of different things. We've had some go back and get professional certifications. They've gone for their AICP, which is the American Institute of Certified Planners certificate. We've had some go back and get their professional engineering or PE license. We've had a few go back to school to get advanced degrees, whether that be a master's degree or a PhD. PhD, you heard Pat talking about how he's going to go through the program here at Montana State while he's with us for the next 2 years. And then the jobs range as well. So we've had those fellows who've gone on to be work with county planning commissions, cities, those who've gone to consulting firms. We've had people go to nonprofits or advocacy groups, some who've gone to transit authorities. And then because we've been able to work through the last several years on this federal non-compete that I mentioned, I'm really excited to say we have figured out at this point how to get that into the works and actually help you guys as fellows get employed by the federal government as well. So 2 of our fellows now work at the headquarters office for Fish and Wildlife Service. And we also have a fellow who's just become the visitor manager for Parker River National Wildlife Refuge, where she was stationed while she was there. And then Tommy and Taylor, do you guys want to, I don't know if you want to talk about what might be next for you. Pat and Charlie obviously are staying with us, and we're very excited about that. But how about Tommy? What are you doing using your non-compete?
Yeah, I was able to use my non-compete to acquire a position with the region, the Southeast region. I'm going to be a transportation analyst, so I'm going to be kind of continuing some of that work that I've done as RTC, but a lot of it's going to be cleaning up data and improving on the data that we have so that we can choose better and more effective projects that will impact not only refuges, but local communities.
And then Taylor, you're using your non-compete too. You can be as general or specific as you'd like to be on your next position.
Yeah. So I accepted a position to work with the U.S. Department of Transportation's Volpe Center. And the Volpe Center is, it's essentially like, it kind of operates as like an internal kind of consulting wing of the U.S. Department of Transportation. So helping different federal agencies. And I don't know the specifics of what I'm going to be working on there, but I do know that I'll be very likely continuing to work with federal land management agencies on transportation projects. So I'm really excited to continue to be doing that work.
Perfect. And we're really excited, as I mentioned, to see our fellows go out and do various different things, and especially now with some of them actually being able to use those non-competes that we've worked towards getting. So hopefully in the future, we'll continue to have more that stay with federal service, as that's one of our goals of this program. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about some of the non-transportation work that you all have done too. So while this is a transportation program or fellowship, you guys are stationed or get to visit beautiful lands all across the country, whether they be refuges or parks. And many of the times you get to participate in different things that if you weren't working for these lands, you may not get to do. All hands on deck kind of things. So I'm hoping that maybe you could share a few of those experiences, those unique opportunities that you got to do being in this position that you wouldn't have had the chance. So I'm going to start with Taylor for that one.
Yeah, so I probably should start with shooting a crossbow. We hold a mentored archery deer hunt here at John Hines Refuge, and so I was helping out with that and had the chance to learn how to shoot a crossbow and also get certified to teach archery. So I might actually continue to help out with some of the archery programs here as a volunteer, because I'm going to be staying in the Philadelphia area. Other things is got to work with the biology team on doing some invasive species research and work. So it was like literally like in gators, like walking around the marsh trying to like grab different fish species with a net. And we also got to do some duck banding too, which was really, really fun. So yeah, lots of different things, a lot of community engagement stuff too, and like work doing outdoor skills workshops with the surrounding Southwest Philadelphia community is really fun.
And how about from the NPS side? Charlie, can you talk a little bit about what you might have done?
I can talk about what Charlie and I did.
Okay, go ahead.
I lost my my thing. Yeah, Pat, go for it. I know what you're going to talk about.
Yeah, so with the Trailblazer project that I mentioned, where we were assessing the condition of transportation trails in the NPS, Charlie and I got to do a trip where we took the bikes to Cumberland, Maryland, and then rode them all the way back to DC over the course of 3 days and 185 miles, which was a ton of fun, and not a bad day in the office to be riding the bike for a couple days straight, doing a really fun trip like that, and just recording data for this cool project that we had. So I'd say that was a fun, unique trip that both of us got to do together.
Yeah, that was wicked cool. That was wicked fun.
So I'm going to go ahead and pull up our slide and put us on the very last slide, which will have on it contact information for myself if anyone has further questions. It will also have a QR code for the web page or a link for the web page for where you can find the application information when we get it. Go ahead and post that starting again in January. And additionally, we have a distribution list that we will email out once that is available. So if you're not already on that distribution list, you can sign up for that. So I'm going to pull that up here in a second. But while I'm doing that, as we start to close out today, I'm hoping that we can go around again to each of our 4 fellows. And if you could, say what the biggest benefit of the program has been to you and why the people on this call or watching the recording should consider applying for the program. So let's go ahead. How about Pat?
Well, I feel like the biggest professional benefit for me has been the ability to work in the climate change adaptation and resilience realm. That I have been academically interested in climate change and impacts to natural resources and things of that nature. But this fellowship, gave me actual professional experience working with that, which has been great. And then as far as just like personal benefits of the program is, like Jamie said, that we get to travel to some of the most beautiful parts of the country, like working in some iconic landscapes, really makes you grateful for the work you're doing, and can be just, a really exciting part of the fellowship to see some of the most beautiful parts of America. So I'll leave it at that.
Tommy?
Yeah, professionally, I mean, the fellowship has given me so many experiences that I've always wanted to have that I just was having a hard time getting previously. And yeah, I don't know, it just really opened my eyes. I wasn't necessarily like jazzed on the idea of the Fish and Wildlife Service because I didn't know really what it was, and I'd done a lot of work with the Park Service and the Forest Service before. But after a year and a half, I can't express how happy I am to have gotten to work with fish and all the people across the country. And yeah, from a more personal level, I got to add a few more friends that hopefully we'll get to stay in contact with and make some changes in the transportation world across public lands.
Taylor?
Yeah, I'd have to say professionally, like there's not a lot of my other friends who graduated into like the planning field, they have not had the opportunity to have as many different types of experiences. I think in terms of like an entry level position out of school, it's a great way to just like rack up a ton of experience with this work, and have a lot of autonomy in a way that you wouldn't have at maybe another entry level position. At the same time, there's a lot of support there in place for you. Jamie and the folks at WTI are a great support system. A lot of the folks that I've worked with at Fish have been really excellent mentors. So yeah, definitely all of the experience and all of the people are just really great and generally want to help you and are very like value aligned in terms of really appreciating some of the natural resources that we have.
And last but certainly not least, to wrap us up, Charlie.
I think that if you look at this fellowship and you look at what it offers, what it gives you the possibilities of doing, the experiences you can have along the way, it would be very hard, in my mind, for me personally, to justify doing anything different with my time. I mean, it is a transformative experience. You know, I was selling kayaks before I was working with the fellows. And I think, you know, looking around now at grad programs, it's really hard to find anything that would come close to offering what this fellowship has. I mean, I feel better educated in the world of planning and doing than a lot of classes could offer. So, you know, you get all of these benefits and then you get paid pretty nicely too. Like, what's not great about that? So I highly recommend it. I mean, I'm happy to be staying on. The other fellows are fantastic, and I'm glad they're going on to wonderful things as well. But, you know, we owe so much to this fellowship, and I think you should consider joining as well.
Thank you, and I don't think I could have said anything any better. So thank you all for joining us today. I hope that you will consider applying. Again, if you haven't joined our distribution list, please do that. Please check out our webpage, and applications will be open at the beginning of January. We hope you'll consider becoming a part of our fellowship. Thank you, everyone.